For more than 40 years, a single, quiet conflict has shaped nearly every major event in the Middle East. Now, this isn't a war fought with tank divisions and declared battles. It's a shadow war, waged through proxies, through cyber attacks, and with crippling economic pressure. This is the story of the long, incredibly complex rivalry between Iran and its Arab neighbors.
And let me ask you this. Can a $100 drone take down a $1 trillion economy? Because that is not some hypothetical scenario. In 2019, that's exactly what the world saw happen. A swarm of cheap, off-the-shelf drones and cruise missiles completely bypassed sophisticated defenses and paralyzed Saudi Arabia's Abqaiq oil facility. That one attack was a brutal signal that the old rules of war were officially dead. To really grasp how we got to this point, we have to go all the way back to the beginning.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the revolutionary spark of 1979 that started it all. Then, we'll trace the birth of this shadow war. After that, we'll see how the battlefield went digital. We'll analyze why we're in a cold peace today. And finally, we'll look at what's coming next.
Okay, our story really kicks off in 1979. This was the year that ripped the region in two, turning one-time allies into bitter, decades-long rivals. And you have to understand, this was never just about religion. At its core, it was about survival.
The entire conflict, from day one, has been driven by this one core concept in geopolitics, the security dilemma. Think of it this way. Every single move one country makes to feel more secure is seen by its rival as an aggressive threat, and that perception forces them to react, which in turn is seen as a threat by the first country. It's a vicious cycle of escalation, and it has been the engine of this rivalry for over 40 years.
So before 1979, Iran was what we'd call a status quo power. They were a key U.S. ally, a monarchy, and they worked alongside Saudi Arabia as one of the twin pillars keeping the Gulf secure. But after the Islamic Revolution, everything flipped. Iran became a revisionist power. The new leadership had zero interest in the old order. Their goal was to export their revolution across the region, and for the monarchies of the Gulf, that was an existential threat.
And the reaction from those Gulf states was immediate. It was decisive. They were terrified of this new revolutionary ideology spreading. So Saudi Arabia and its allies poured billions of dollars into Saddam Hussein's Iraq. The objective? To build a powerful Sunni shield, a buffer state, strong enough to contain Iran's ambitions. And just like that, the first pieces of a massive proxy war were set on the board.
Now, this deep fear of a direct, all-out war between the major powers forced the entire conflict underground. It gave birth to a whole new era of asymmetric proxy warfare, a battle fought not on a front line, but through deniable attacks, subversion, and terror.
And the 1980s saw things escalate fast. You had a failed coup in Bahrain in '81, then a series of bombings in Kuwait in '83. These were the early moves, proving that borders meant nothing in this new conflict. But the real psychological turning point, that was the 1987 Hajj riots in Mecca. It created a deep, bitter fracture over who was the true custodian of Islam's holiest sites. From then on, the playbook was set. By 1996, you had an Iranian-backed group, Hezbollah al-Hijaz, striking U.S. military targets inside Saudi Arabia itself at the Khobar Towers.
Then came 2003, and everything changed. The U.S. invasion of Iraq didn't just topple a dictator, it completely shattered the regional balance of power. By removing Saddam Hussein, the very Sunni buffer the Gulf states had spent a fortune to build, the invasion basically handed strategic control of Iraq to Iran on a silver platter. The nightmare scenario, the Shiite Crescent, a solid arc of Iranian influence stretching from Tehran all the way to Beirut, was no longer a theory. It was a fact on the ground.
And this new reality on the map forced the conflict to evolve yet again. The battlefield was about to shift, moving from bombs and bullets to bytes and drones. We were entering a very dangerous new era.
We're now in the age of gray zone warfare. Okay, so forget about tanks rolling across borders. This is all about conducting hostile acts that fall just below the threshold of a declared war. It means using deniable proxies, crippling cyber attacks, disinformation, and of course, cheap but lethally effective drone technology. It lets you inflict unbelievable damage without ever firing a shot in a traditional war. And the results? They've been absolutely devastating. In 2012, the Shamoon virus wiped 30,000 computers at Saudi Aramco, a direct hit on the economic heart of the kingdom. In Yemen, we've watched the Houthis transform from a local militia into a sophisticated regional threat armed with ballistic missiles. And it all led to that 2019 Abqaiq strike, which was, frankly,
a masterclass in low-cost, high-impact gray zone conflict. So that brings us to today. After decades of this escalating shadow war, a deal brokered by China in 2023 seemed to signal a major thaw. But the real question is this a true peace? To figure that out, you have to dig into the core interests of all the major players at the table.
To really understand this cold peace, you've got to map out what everyone wants. For Saudi Arabia, it's all about economics. Their massive Vision 2030 project cannot work if the region is in flames. For Iran, it's about pure survival and expanding influence. They need sanctions lifted, and they want the US out. And then you have the new players, like China, whose goal is very simple: keep the oil flowing for their economy and position themselves as the new rational power broker in the Gulf.
So what this all adds up to isn't peace. Not really. It's what analysts are calling a managed rivalry. It's a tactical pause. Both sides have come to realize that in a world that is slowly moving past oil, a full-blown war would be catastrophic for everyone. So it's an agreement to keep competing, but to keep the drones on the ground so the oil can keep flowing.
Okay, so if that's where we are, where does this managed rivalry lead? Well, the final chapter of this conflict likely won't be fought with soldiers at all, but with servers and with silicate.
Forget everything you know about old arms races. The future of defense, the future of deterrence in the Gulf, is all about achieving what's called cyber sovereignty. The next war will be a war of code and artificial intelligence, leading to the rise of a silicon shield designed to protect critical infrastructure from the gray zone threats of tomorrow.
So here's the forecast for 2026 and beyond. First, the proxies haven't gone anywhere. They're just on standby. Second, the big military investments for the Gulf states are going to pivot hard, away from hardware like fighter jets and towards software and AI-driven defense systems. And third, the main goal fundamentally shifts. It's no longer about total victory, but about managed stability, because economic survival is now more important than ideology.
But all of this, the gray zone tactics, the managed rivalry, the silicon shield, it all hangs on one final terrifying question. What happens if Iran develops a nuclear weapon? Because if the shadow war goes nuclear, this cold peace turns white hot in an instant. And Saudi Arabia's position on this could not be clearer. If they get it, we get it. And that remains the ultimate, terrifying fault line running right beneath the sands of the Middle East.